I was still in uniform when my stepfather said my leg wasn't worth $5,000. The doctor had just said the word disability, not as a threat, but as a fact, if surgery didn't happen soon. My phone was pressed to my ear, my boot half open, my knee swollen so much that it was stretching the fabric. On the other end of the line, my stepsister laughed, while my stepfather said, calmly, almost gently, "Sweetheart, we just bought a new car. This isn't a good time." In that moment, something inside me went quiet. I was stationed 2 hours from home when it happened. It was just another routine training drill. Boring, predictable. We'd done it countless times. Movement under load, controlled pace, nothing dramatic. But I remember the sound first. A sharp, wet pop that shouldn't happen in a human body. Then heat. Then the ground shot up at me. Pain in the military is nothing new. You learn fast to separate it from danger. This was different. This was the kind of pain that steals your breath and replaces it with a white noise, filling every corner of your mind. I tried to stand. My leg folded as if it didn't belong to me. A medic dropped to his knees beside me, pressing his fingers into the swelling, his eyes narrowing. "Don't move," he said. Not softly, seriously. The fluorescent lights of the clinic buzzed above me as I lay on the narrow bed. My uniform was cut away at the knee. My legs swelled within minutes, the skin tight and glossy, changing colors I didn't have words for, purples, yellows, and darker shades underneath. The physician's assistant didn't sugarcoat it. "The ligaments are badly damaged, maybe worse," he said, showing my MRI on the screen. "Surgery will need to happen soon." "How soon?" I asked. He paused. That pause said everything. "This week," he said. "Wait, and you risk long-term disability, limping, limited mobility, maybe permanent damage." I nodded as if he'd just told me the weather. The issue wasn't the surgery, it was approval. Anyone who served knows the waiting game. Forms, reviews, sign-offs, another person's signature standing between you and your body. Weeks could pass before the military medical system signed off. I didn't have weeks. His voice softened. "If you can get it done outside the base, do it." "How much?" I asked. He scribbled a number on a scrap of paper. "Just the initial cost, the first installment toward normal walking again." That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, my leg wrapped in thick gauze, my boot lying empty on the floor. Around the barracks, life went on. Laughter, music, someone yelling at a video game. Life kept moving. I stared at my phone for a long time, then called home. My stepfather answered on the third ring. "Hey, sweetie," he said cheerfully, distracted. There was a metallic background noise, tools, or maybe a TV. "Dad," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm hurt, badly." He listened as I laid it out. Injury, surgery, timeline, cost. I told him I'd pay him back. I just needed help now. Silence. Then the familiar sigh he always gave before saying no. "We just bought the car. You know, timing's bad." I closed my eyes. "It's my leg," I said. "If I don't do this, I might not walk right again." "All right, you're young. You'll adjust." Mom had passed, but I thought of her. She always cared. Then my stepsister's voice, bright and teasing. "Hey, take it easy. You always make a big deal out of things, remember? You're tough." She laughed. For real this time. I looked down at my leg, blood seeping through the gauze, turning clean white into raw, real color. I remembered the doctor's words. Permanent. "I get it," I said. And I did. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I hung up and sat in the noise of the barracks, feeling something inside me freeze. Cold. Clear. 2 days later, I was back in my tiny off-base apartment, moving on crutches with every step reminding me of what was at stake. Painkillers dulled the irony, but they couldn't touch the fear. I kept running the numbers, credit cards, payday loans, anything that could buy me time. There was a knock at the door. I opened it to see my stepbrother standing there, a grease-stained jacket, dark circles under his eyes. He worked at a mechanic shop outside the city, 60 hours a week, minimum wage, hands always cut and scarred. He looked at my leg and muttered a curse under his breath. "They didn't help you," he said. "That's not a question." I nodded. Without another word, he pulled a thick wad of bills from his pocket, 10s, 20s, old, creased, and pressed it into my hands. 800, he said. "I sold all my tools for this." I stared at him. "You needed it," I said. "I needed to see you walking," he replied. "I'll figure out the rest later." My stepfather had assets, savings, equity, a car named after some vacation spot they'd been to once. My brother had nothing, and he gave me everything. I took the money, not because it was enough, it wasn't even close, but to remember. To remember who showed up when I was hurt. As he left, he pressed a hand to my shoulder. "You'll be fine," he said. "You always are." He didn't know what was coming next, but I did. That night, I couldn't sleep, not because of the pain, though it came in slow, deliberate waves, but because my mind replayed old scenes I'd worked so hard to forget. Moments I told myself didn't matter. Evidence I'd buried beneath layers of discipline and duty. Growing up in a family like mine, you learn early how to label yourself. My stepsister was the asset. My stepfather said it openly, without shame. She had potential. She needed support. Every failure of hers was just a temporary setback on the way to a big success. I was the dependable one, the one who asked nothing, who handled everything herself. When my stepsister launched her first business, a small online boutique that burned through $15,000 in 6 months, my stepfather wrote her a check without a blink. No questions, no contracts, no lectures. When her second venture failed, a wellness studio with more mirrors than clients, he mortgaged part of the house to save it. "You have to spend money to make money," he said, proudly, as if reading from scripture. I remember sitting at the kitchen table during those conversations, quietly eating my own grain after a 12-hour shift at my first civilian job. I said nothing. I just watched. When I was 22, my car transmission went out. I needed $2,000 to fix it so I could get to work. I asked my stepfather for a loan, not a gift, a loan. He agreed on terms. He printed a contract with 5% interest. My stepsister insisted on notarization. "It has to be official," she said. "It builds character." For 6 months, I ate from cans and walked miles to save gas. I paid off the loan quickly, believing that responsibility earned respect. It didn't. It just set the standard for how much I could endure without complaint. Now, sitting in my apartment, leg propped on pillows, the pattern finally made sense. It was never about the money. It never was. They had the money. It just wasn't for me. The next morning, I called the military hospital again. Same answer. Approval was still pending, timelines under review. I didn't have that kind of time. I scrolled through my contacts, landing on the number I never wanted to use. High-interest personal loans, payday lenders, the places where people talk wide-smiled and soft-voiced. And still, I went. The office smelled of cheap coffee and disappointment. Across the desk sat a man, calm, speaking in rehearsed lines, while his computer calculated how much of my future I was trading for the present. Interest rates were brutal. The repayment schedule, merciless. "Do you understand the terms?" he asked. "Yes," I said. I signed. The surgery was scheduled 2 days later. On the morning of the procedure, I lay on my knee, counting ceiling tiles, cracks as if they could tell me something important. A nurse adjusted my IV. The anesthesiologist asked me to count backward. As the world blurred, I heard my stepfather's voice. "We just bought the car." When I woke up, my leg was wrapped in bandages and layers of metal. The pain was sharp, but clean, like finally something was right. The surgeon came in later to confirm what I already felt. "We got it done in time," he said. "Follow your rehab and you'll fully recover." Relief came so fast, it almost hurt. But recovery showed no mercy with money. The first loan payment was due in 3 days. I checked my bank account, $47 and some loose change. My paycheck wasn't coming for another week. I started doing the math that didn't add up, moving numbers around as if magic could fix them. I thought about selling plasma, furniture, things I wasn't proud of. Then I remembered something small and ridiculous. A gas station receipt near the pharmacy in my jacket pocket. I'd bought a water bottle, some crackers, and a lottery ticket, joking with myself while waiting for my pain medicine. I pulled it out, spread it on the desk, opened the app on my phone, read the numbers once, then again. I didn't scream, didn't laugh. I just sat there, listening to the fridge hum, feeling my heartbeat slow. This wasn't a jackpot headline, no fireworks, but it was enough. Enough to breathe, enough to think, enough to stop feeling hopeless. I told no one. Instead, I called a lawyer, not the one with billboards and a jingle, the one in the glass tower downtown who charges by the hour because his time is actually valuable. When I hobbled into his office on crutches, it felt like life had taken a wrong turn. He said nothing, just listened. "I need 2 things," I said. "I want to protect my assets, and I want a better understanding of my step-parents' financial situation than they have themselves." He studied me for a long moment. "The second thing," he said carefully, "changes things." "I know," I replied. "That's why I'm here." As I walked out of his office, my phone buzzed, a message from my brother. "How's your leg?" I typed. "Getting better. Thanks again." He sent a thumbs-up emoji and joked that if his knee ever went out, he'd be borrowing my crutches. He had no idea what I was about to do, and I wasn't ready to tell him yet. The paperwork lasted longer than the pain. That part surprised me. I thought physical recovery would be the hardest part, the slow, patient work of learning to trust my leg again. Instead, it was the waiting rooms, the signatures, the calls that never came back. Forms, fine print, a world colder than any operating table. The loan payments started exactly when they said they would. No grace period, no mercy. Just automatic withdrawals that didn't care whether I was still on crutches or sleeping on the couch because the bed was too far from the bathroom. Every month, half my income disappeared. I cut everything down to the bone. No streaming services, no eating out. Groceries counted like ammunition. Rice, beans, eggs. I learned which days I could skip my pain meds and which days I couldn't. And slowly, deliberately, I started to heal. The way the military teaches you to do everything, controlled movements, one step at a time. Physical therapy became my anchor. The room always smelled faintly of disinfectant and rubber mats. My therapist was an older man, quiet voice, steady hands. He never rushed me. One day, as I struggled through balance drills, he said, "You don't have to prove anything here. Your body isn't your enemy." I tried to believe him. Between sessions, I met with my lawyer. His office overlooked the city, glass, steel, and quiet confidence. He never raised his voice, never promised outcomes. He just asked the right questions and waited for honest answers. 3 days after our first meeting, he slid a thick file across the desk. "This," he said, "is the story your parents tell themselves." I opened it. The illusion collapsed fast. The house I grew up in, the one my mother used to call her nest egg, was buried in debt, refinanced again and again, missed payments, final notices quietly buried. The car, unpaid, not even close. The down payment was on a high-interest credit card. The rest financed on future income that didn't actually exist. My stepsister's business was bleeding, payroll covered by pulling equity from the house. The tax situation was so tangled, my lawyer pressed his lips together before speaking. "They're not wealthy," he said calmly. "They're pretending." I stared at the numbers until they blurred. They refused to give $5,000 to save my leg while burning tens of thousands just to keep appearances. It wasn't cruelty. It was something worse. "Do you want us to shield you from this?" my lawyer asked. "Protect your assets so when it collapses, you're untouched." I closed the file. "No," I said. "I don't want to run from their debt." He raised an eyebrow. "I want to own it." That was the moment the plan became real. After that, things moved fast, efficient, quiet. A company was formed, a name chosen that meant nothing and everything. No family connections, no personal identity, just a clean shell. Through the company, we contacted the institutions holding my parents' debt. Banks don't like bad loans. They like clean books, and they're often quicker to trade one for the other than people expect. I bought the debt, not because of greed, because of clarity. Within 48 hours, I went from the ignored daughter to the entity that held their house, their loans, their fragile sense of stability. They didn't know. That was the hardest part. Sitting there, knowing that if I walked into my step-parents' living room and told the truth, they would never sign the papers they were supposed to. They would cry, beg, try to rewrite history. So I didn't go as a daughter. I went as an opportunity. A mediator reached out on behalf of my company. Professional, polished, British accent, the kind my father always trusted more than his own judgment. A meeting was set, a private lunch club downtown, the place my father liked because it made him feel important. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. Later, I heard the recording of how the offer was presented. Quote, "Our company specializes in distressed assets. We see value where others don't. We believe in retention strategies for families like yours, sale and leaseback arrangements, immediate relief, no foreclosure, no public embarrassment. You can stay in the house, maintain your lifestyle, and a small line of credit can stabilize operations." I could hear the tension in my father's voice. My stepsister asked cautious questions, but only about appearances, not terms. The contract was long, 50 pages, every word sharp. One clause cut like a sword. Any violation, delay, misuse, immediate termination, immediate possession. No court delays, no exceptions. They didn't read it. Why would they? Parents like mine never believe rules applied to them. When the pen scratched paper, a calm spread through my chest. Not relief, not happiness, closure. That night, I stood from the couch for the first time without crutches. My leg held me steady. One careful step, then another. I wasn't limping anymore, and for the first time since the injury, I smiled. Not because I had won, but because I could finally stand on my own 2 feet. They still believed I was the daughter who handled everything. They had no idea what they had just given me. I didn't rush the next step. This was the discipline the military had burned into me. Move with intent, not with emotion. Rushing makes noise. Noise makes people watch. And what I needed most was silence. From the outside, nothing had changed. My step-parents told friends they had restructured. At dinner parties, they used words like savvy and strategic. My stepsister posted filtered images online, champagne glasses, reflections in new light, vague captions about alignment and abundance. They seemed light, content, almost proud. They had no idea. They were now the tenants. I watched from a distance, rebuilding my body while they rebuilt their delusions. Physical therapy ranged from balance boards to resistance bands, from cautious footwork to controlled lunges. My therapist nodded, approved, then pushed harder. One afternoon, he said, "You're stronger than before. That injury forced you to correct things you didn't even know were wrong." I understood what he meant. Pain doesn't just heal you when confronted, it recalibrates you. The same principle applied financially. Once I bought the debt, the numbers weren't scary anymore. They became tools. I knew exactly when payments were due, what the margins were, how fragile the situation really was beneath the surface. There's a voice in trust and fragility. It's quiet, like glass under pressure. The first sign came weeks after the deal had closed, when my stepfather called. His voice, calm, practiced. "Hello," he said. "Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a few days." I kept my voice neutral. "I'm in the middle of rehab." Yeah, good, he said quickly. A pause. Then, almost as an afterthought, "We've been busy. Meetings. Big changes." "Glad to hear it," I replied. He waited for more. Praise. Curiosity. When none came, he cleared his throat and ended the call. I set the phone down and marked the date on my calendar. People like my father need witnesses. Stop showing them their own reflection, and they get restless. They start making mistakes. The mediator, still the only point of contact between my company and them, sent monthly compliance summaries. Clean, polite, boring. My parents surely glanced at them. They always glanced at the important stuff. Late fees were in bold, use clauses written in plain language. They nodded, smiled, assumed exceptions would be granted. Thanksgiving approached, along with the annual performance. The holiday sacred at our house, not for gratitude, but for presentation. The table perfect, the food excessive, stories rehearsed. A day to prove to everyone that they were successful. This year was no different. My stepsister arrived early wearing something new and expensive, loudly talking about investors and expansion. Wine flowed freely, bottles bought with the line of credit they didn't realize was already stretched thin. My stepfather carved the turkey as always, slow and formal, as if the act itself confirmed his authority. He looked at me across the table, my posture straight, legs steady. "You're walking better," he said. "Observation, not a question," he added. "Yes," I replied. He nodded, satisfied, as if rehab had been inevitable, as if no denial had ever existed. At one point, my stepsister raised her glass. "To partners who see our value," she said, "not those banks who only see numbers." Laughter, agreement, pride. I took a sip of water, said nothing. They celebrated on money I controlled in a home I owned, while congratulating themselves for gaming a system they never bothered to understand. Almost admirable. 3 weeks later, the first violation. Not dramatic, never is. A scheduled payment. The system sent reminders. Emails unread. My stepfather tried to pay online late at night, assumed it went through, slept satisfied. It hadn't. The next morning, when they realized the error, it was too late. Clauses don't care about intent. They don't care about excuses. They only care about timestamps. Lease expired at 12:01 a.m., notices filed at 8 a.m. I watched the confirmation pop up on my screen. Clear, irrevocable. Then I scheduled a meeting. The mediator presented it as a routine compliance review. My step-parents arrived irritated, not worried. 20 minutes late, complaining about traffic, asking for coffee. "Where's the senior partner?" my stepfather snapped. "We don't waste time with junior staff." I was already seated, chair swiveled toward them. For a second, they didn't recognize me. Then my stepsister's smile fell. My mother's face drained of color. My stepfather stared, mouth opening and closing, searching for meaning. "Hello," I said, even-toned. "Mother, father." Silence pressed down, thick and heavy. "I'm reviewing it," I continued. "I'm the owner." The words landed exactly where I aimed. My stepfather stepped forward, anger immediate and hot. "This is a joke." "No," I said. "This is the contract." I laid everything out, slide by slide. Purchase of the debt, missed payments, the clause they never read. My mother started crying, not the polished tears she said in public, but raw, anxious ones. "You deceived us," she whispered. I nodded. "You signed." Security moved closer as my stepfather's voice rose, threats spilling out too fast to control. He said things he could never take back, mentioned accounts he had no right to touch. I listened. When he finished, I placed a single document on the table. "I reported this," I said softly, "weeks ago." The room went silent. The air was cold and clear the moment I stepped outside. I took a full breath, weight evenly on both feet. I pulled out my phone and called my brother. "Pack your things," I said. "I bought the shop." Silence. Then disbelief. Then laughter laced with tears. I hung up and stood there for a moment, feeling a strange calm settle in my chest. Not revenge. Decision. Results don't come all at once, and when they do, they arrive quietly. Collapse usually happens in small, soft sounds people ignore until later, the silence itself leaves no denial. After the meeting, my step-parents didn't return home. They couldn't. By the time they arrived, the locks had been changed. A notice posted on the front door, neat and formal, heavy paper, merciless in tone. No shouting, no drama for the neighbors, just procedure. My mother called first. I let it go to voicemail. Her message, long, broken sentences, crying, then trying to sound reasonable, then crying again. Words stripped. Family, misunderstanding, how could you? Never asking forgiveness. Then my stepfather called. No tears, just anger. "You think you're smart?" he thundered. "You think this makes you powerful?" I listened, without interruption, like I had been trained in debriefs. Let people speak, they always reveal more than they intend. Threats, public humiliation, exposure, everything they thought would straighten you out. And then, inevitably, pride. "There's money you don't know about," he said. "Accounts you'll never touch. Offshore, safe." I closed my eyes, drew a breath. When he finished, I spoke for the first time. "I know," I said. "That's why I filed the report." Silence. Line cut. 2 hours later, a text from my lawyer. "Agents on site." I sank slowly into a chair, as if my body finally realized something major had shifted. No adrenaline, just calm. My stepsister tried a different tactic. She arrived at my apartment unannounced, perfect makeup, eyes tinted red just enough to appear sympathetic, knocking at the door in the same measured, confident rhythm she used when she wanted something from me. I didn't open it. She kept speaking outside. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "We could have figured something out." I rested my forehead against the cool wood and listened. "You always do this," she continued. "You take things too far. You make everything so intense." I let a quiet laugh escape. "Intense?" I repeated. "Like refusing $5,000 for surgery?" Her voice rose. "That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It never was." After a while, she left. I watched from the peephole, heels clicking angrily, phone in hand, calling someone else to fix what she had broken. That evening, I went for a walk. No crutches, no brace, just legs steady beneath me, moving through cold air and falling leaves. Every step deliberate, earned. I thought about the girl I used to be, hands shaking, signing alone, the one who swallowed despair and called it maturity. I thought about my brother. The next morning at the shop, his name was on the door. Not as an employee, as an owner. When I told him he would never have to sell tools again, the expression on his face, everything felt worth it in that moment. "You didn't need to," he kept saying. "I know," I said. "I wanted to." Family, I learned, is who you don't raise you. It's who doesn't let you bleed alone. In the following days, the story spread in pieces. Neighbors whispered, friends asked careful questions. My parents tried to control the narrative, but the evidence overwhelmed them. Accounts frozen, investigations launched, and the house, My house now was silent, empty of the life my parents had so carefully curated. I didn't feel victorious. I felt something cleaner, calmer. I hadn't destroyed them. They had destroyed themselves with their pride and certainty. Rules exist for others. They just needed to learn that. All I did was stop shielding them from consequences. One afternoon, as I stepped into the sun after a therapy session, my therapist called out from behind, "You're walking like you're trusting yourself again." I smiled. "Yes," I said, "I am." The house stayed empty longer than I expected. I had imagined noise, lawyers, accusations, public spectacle. Instead, silence ruled everything, like dust settling after a building falls. My parents vanished from their old routines. Lunch clubs canceled memberships, reservations reassigned, friends stopped calling. They couldn't tell which story to believe. Silence spoke for everything. I focused on my recovery, not just physical, but internal, the kind charts or scans could never show. Slowly, I returned to duty, following protocol, regaining confidence correctly. My commanding officer didn't ask questions, just nodded once. "You're fine," he said, clear-headed. I was. One evening, my brother and I were closing the shop. The space smelled of oil, metal, and fresh paint. Walls repainted, tools replaced one by one. There was pride in his movements, a lightness I had never seen before. "They came," he said casually, rubbing his hands. "Who?" "Mom and Dad. Didn't come in, just stood across the street for a while." I pictured them. My father, rigid and imposing. My mother, hands tightly clasped. The building, one they had never really noticed because it didn't fit their idea of success. "What did they want?" I asked. He shrugged. "Didn't ask." We locked up and stepped outside. The sky was orange and purple, the air sharp and clean. "I told them this place isn't theirs," he said later. "You didn't have to." "I had to." A week later, a formal notice arrived from the lawyer. Charges moving forward, timeline set. Nothing sensational, just the machinery of accountability running patiently and relentlessly. My mother made a final attempt, a handwritten letter. Several pages, broken sentences, all effort, all of family mistakes. Forgiveness written as if it were a debt. At the end, "I hope one day you understand why we did what we did." I folded the letter, returned it to its envelope. I had understood, choosing calm over sympathy, integrity over image, walking ability over a ship of love that seemed essential. No reconciliation was needed to understand. That night, I stood on the balcony, felt the strength in my leg. I thought about the self who once believed love was something you earned lightly by asking little. That belief was gone, replaced by something firmer, quieter, self-respect. Morning sunlight streamed through the window. The air was crisp and fresh, as if the heavy silence of the past days had finally been absorbed. I put on my uniform, laced up my boots, and walked toward the shop. Not with the careful steps of before, but natural, strong, and deliberate. By the time I arrived, my brother was already there. The tools lined up perfectly, every item on its shelf. He looked at me and nodded. No words. A quiet understanding, one we had never spoken aloud. For the first time, I saw that day, the day I felt complete, where body, mind, and decisions were aligned. I opened the door, felt the temperature, lifted the weight of each tool in my hands, understood the meaning in every silence. Later that night, as the city lights dimmed softly, I stood on the balcony. The air was cool, leaves rustled. I felt the strength in my leg, and for the first time, straightened it without fear or support. My sister called occasionally, choosing her words carefully. But now she understood. No drama, no deception. She went quiet, as if realizing life must be lived on the foundation of reality. I looked at myself in the mirror. No fatigue, no fear, no shame. Only calm, confidence, and freedom. This freedom was not revenge. It was not victory. It was the life I had earned with my own hands. Quiet, strong, fearless.
If you're listening to this and even one line has moved something inside you, if you are the one who always showed strength, stayed silent, one everyone said, you can handle it all, I want you to remember this. You are not weak just because you needed help. And you are not wrong for deciding to break the chain. Silence is never strength when it's breaking you from the inside. I want to know, what do you think? Did I go too far? Or just far enough? Comment below and share where you're listening from. We bring stories like this every day.